crisis. Let's see. There was one above here. Highly leveraged property investors like Nathan Birch are starting to come undone, and let's see why government cannot supply its way to housing affordability. As banks reined in their borrowing to investors and cut back on interest-only lending last year, Nathan turned to a lender of last resort to fund a new acquisition. Birch, who AFR Weekend revealed was sued by non-bank lender Permanent Mortgages after his company defaulted on a $5.35K Gold Coast investment, got a mortgage with MKM Capital in November last year to fund the $500,000 purchase of another Gold Coast property, a 3-bedroom home in Southport. Okay. MKM Capital calls itself the tricky loan specialist. This sounds sketchy. Help borrowers who do not meet the lending criteria of mainstream lenders. You can tell, like just from that, any service that caters to people who don't qualify for anything mainstream is going to cost you an arm and leg. We aim to help good borrowers who find themselves in bad situations. Yeah, maybe. Probably not. Amongst its specialties are loan for borrowers with unlimited arrears and defaults. I have no idea what that is. This guy's company secured its loan with MKM Capital a week after Brisbane District ruled that another Birch company, blah blah blah, pay permanent mortgage over $565,000. Okay, what's the point? Birch, who claims to make over $500,000 a year after expenses from the rent he receives from his 200 investment properties. That's just insane. That's just insane. Not that he makes that much money, but he's one guy holding 200 properties. He has also obtained mortgage funding from non-mainstream lenders like Permanent Custodians, Perpetual Trustees, and BNY Trust Companies. He also turned to the same high-interest lenders who took him to court last year, Permanent Mortgages, to fund the $1.8 million purchase of a home in Annan Grove in Sydney's outer north. Okay, what are we getting at here? They have borrowed on property which is high yielding, but which is the first to fall when the market starts to reverse. Property investment guru Sky News television host Margaret Lomas said Nathan Birch had clearly just bought based on market sentiment and price. So obviously they're turning on him, not only the lenders but also the media. He became highly leveraged, and I think in this case it's deserved. He became highly leveraged, which is something we recommend against, and this strategy is not suitable for most, especially those with personal mortgage dependents and liabilities. He calls himself a buy and hold investor, but no buy and hold investor buys property like kids buy action figures. Yeah, I mean, you just buy 200 properties, and which I'm guessing most of them are on mortgage, and none of them are paid off. While this is the most clearly seen with specific bank, I would expect others to follow in due course. Okay, paywall. But this is insane. Like one guy with his several, which sounds like placeholder companies, owns 200 properties. That's why there's an affordability crisis in Australia, because all the money is flowing into real estate. All good, bad, any kind of credit that's just flowing to real estate. Okay, let's see what's going on with the why government can't supply its way to housing affordability. I think what it has to do with the government opening up new zones, zones for construction for residential building. And basically, if you have the same forces at play, if you still have the negative gearing, if you still have people, it's like the guy we read about, one guy owning 200 properties, I don't think you can supply that much to, since the credit is, loans are so easily available, people are just going to invest more. That's my feeling, but let's see what Jennifer Duke has to say. While the government has hoped record high level of property development would have an impact, research shows supply is not behind the price fall. Housing economists say the market slowdown is not, so there is a slowdown already. It's not due to additional home building but a drop in demand, in part thanks to the banking regulator making it more difficult for some to get a loan. In fact, the effect of new supply on property prices has been very limited despite state governments largely pinning hopes on a surging home building industry to rein in affordability. That's never going to happen. Basically, they're expecting construction companies to not sell at the market price, because why would they? Why would they sell anything on affordable prices? They would sell it on as much as the market can afford. So, I mean, it does. The supply does play a part, but in this case, it just seems like other factors are so overwhelming. This is not going to have that much effect. In a recent Australian National ANU paper, academics Ben Phillips and Kuku Joseph found supply level from 2001 to 2017 were larger than necessary to cover demand requirements, with thousands of excess homes in Sydney, but prices boomed over the time period. This flies in the face of conventional economic wisdom, with the law of supply and demand dictating that the more something you make, the cheaper it should be. It will be eventually, but right now, as I've said multiple times, people are just too cozy to the easy loans they can get. There are many reasons why housing doesn't respond to increase in supply in the way the market for coal, apples, t-shirt might be expected to react, because you don't buy coal, apple or t-shirts and hold them and hope the prices will rise. It's not an investment instrument. Houses shouldn't be either, but they are apparently now. When economists are making models, they usually assume they are calculating the impact on a normal good. One of the assumptions often made when modeling supply and demand for those goods is that what is produced is all homogeneous, that there are more or less the same. Housing is not in this category. Even in the most sterile of apartment blocks, there will be many different design features. So basically, there's no one size fits all. Most of the recent supply has been upwards rather than outwards, with the majority of new apartments having 2-bedroom despite a sustained appetite for freestanding houses. That's true. A lot of apartment buildings that no one really wants to live in, maybe people will buy to invest. For many goods measured by economists, when the price rises, the consumer can simply switch to something more affordable. But you gotta live somewhere. You gotta live in a school district, which is good for kids. So real estate is also asset class, bought with dual purpose to live and speculate on potential growth as investment. Entirely different behavior when prices rise. Other than demand dropping off, it tends to encourage a fear of missing out. That makes sense. And this is, how long is the article? You don't get FOMO over bananas, you buy apples instead. If you choose not to buy properties, there are fewer options available because you gotta live somewhere. So you're paying that rent anyways. So as long as the offer is, hey, this is how much you're paying in rent, and if you can get a house of your own and get a mortgage payment at almost the same price, why wouldn't you? That's how they get you in. And on the face of it, that does make sense. But if the interests go up and if the market goes down, all of those factors play into the equation. Renting can be an option. Staying in your current home another, though someone still has to have bought the development in the first place. Those who currently own can extend or renovate instead to move. But there are fewer alternatives for investors, particularly those attracted to home ownership for its unique combination of being understandable, physically tangible, and in many situations able to provide a value add through renovation or development. That's what it is. I think I've had this discussion with many people. You can invest in a lot of financial instruments. I'm not too knowledgeable about those, like stocks, bonds, all those kind of things, and still make same or more money. And if you invest in the index stocks, your money still is protected against inflation, and it grows with time. But the attraction of the housing, it's tangible, it's easily understandable for people. there's not a lot of learning curve. You can just walk up to a house, and if you like it, you just buy it. You feel like you know as much as everybody else who's at the auction, more or less. It's not that complicated, so it's really the barrier to entry is really low, at least from a mental, psychological threshold. It's not that low from an investment perspective, but people can convince themselves really easily. It also means that when properties are finally completed, the requirements of next wave of buyers may be different. They warned a new supply-only approach from the government could unlikely to succeed without complementary action. It is clear housing affordability policies should put reducing demand in the spotlight, with supply-side changes moved to supporting act role. Okay, makes sense. Is there any good comment on this? How do I get 2 comments? I don't know. Let's leave it. Okay, anything else? What's going on here? What do I